When large jobs require moving massive amounts of snow, get the work done quickly and efficiently with the Western Pile Driver and all-new Pile Driver XL pusher plows, both featuring Trace Edge technology. These pushers scrape down to the pavement with an advanced cutting-edge system that has independent 2-foot sections that move vertically, oscillate, and trip. Get more jobs done faster with the Western Pile Driver lineup of pusher plows.
Mike Bott from Frost Solutions, one of the owners of the company. What we do is provide a mini weather station to give you a tailored forecast to those particular locations so you know where and when and what to do in those parts of town. You know there's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different ways that people can experience tremendous value having a technology like this.
Welcome to the Entrepreneurial Journey with your host, Dave Westcott. The Entrepreneurial Journey is a weekly podcast that streams live every Tuesday at 9:15 a.m. Pacific on Dave's YouTube channel and LinkedIn profile. Now here's Dave with this week's episode.
Good morning and welcome to the Entrepreneurial Journey. I'm your host, Dave Westcott, and I have with me special guest, Casey Brown, founder of Boost Pricing. Casey, good morning.
Good morning, Dave. I'm so happy to be with you.
I'm so glad that you're here. Where in the U.S. are you located today?
So I live in Columbus, Ohio, and that's where I typically make my podcast appearances, but I'm actually traveling. I'm in the mountains of Western Maryland today.
Oh, okay. Any snow on the ground out there?
Yes. And in fact, there's been a ton of snow here. We've gotten probably 50 inches in the last month and a half. I mean, a lot of for us, that's a lot of snow.
That's a lot of snow for anybody.
Okay, good. Good. I
think that's too much snow. My friend Jack Daly always says, "Hey, you know what? I pay the sunshine tax and I live in California, so I don't have to deal with any of that snow."
Yeah.
So
well, I like snow. You and I both like snow.
I
right?
do like snow. I like snow when I'm plowing it and the crews are doing a good job and the sidewalks are shoveled and we're making money. That's my favorite time to see it. So you've been doing this for 25 years. You're a pricing geek with a passion to help leaders, entrepreneurs, and sellers command the prices they deserve. You've helped over 1,000 companies generate over $1 billion in incremental profits. How does that happen?
Well, great question. I know this podcast is of limited duration, so I'll summarize it. Most pricing decisions in the world are made from a place of fear, not from confidence. We're very often, whether it's the entrepreneur, business owner, leader making that pricing decision or a frontline salesperson, we're a lot of times pricing not to lose the deal rather than pricing to win based confidently in our value. And so decisions rooted in fear are costing companies 5 to 6 to 7 to 8 figures a year of profitability, depending on how big they are. And so through keynotes and training and in the book and everywhere I go, I kind of beat the drum that, really pulling back the curtain on customer tactics and then arming sellers with the methods, messaging tools, and frankly, most importantly, the confidence to kind of enter the ring, with the customer, take the punches, kind of rope-a-dope style, and then walk out with the most deals possible at the highest prices possible. And it adds up. Pennies and nickels turn into millions of dollars fast.
They do. Now, when you're in the B2B world, it seems like the customer always has a mission to drive the price down. Mm-hmm. They're always betting you against somebody else. They're always driving you against someone else. They're always trying to drive the price down to nothing. How do you coach somebody to combat that?
Yeah, well, so it is very true. I would say the skill level to accomplish that is higher in the B2B space, but in the B2C, it really doesn't matter. If you look at the why that happens, like what's behind customer motivation, none of us wants to pay more for anything ever under any circumstance, whether it's a business to business deal or any other. So the first step is maybe examine the motivation and say, hey, it's just that person's job. They have a boss to report to or employees to pay, and they have a job to do, which is to try to get your stuff for less. You also have a job to do, which is to get paid for your value. And that creates the tension. One of the things that I think is most problematic in the mindset of the seller is that they give too much power to the buyer. They sort of think the buyer has all the power because they're writing the PO or cutting the check, or signing the contract. Like they have all the power and we have none. I compare pricing to poker in this way. Like there's you're looking at the strength of your hand, you're trying to guess at the strength of the other guy's hand. Both sides are bluffing, right? Buyers are trying to hide how much they're actually willing to pay.
Yep.
Sellers are trying to hide how little they're actually willing to accept. And I think in most, the poker game of pricing, the buyer wins more often because both sides buy into the illusion they do have a stronger hand. But what I would say to sellers is, I would ask them, do you believe in what you sell? Do you have a real solution that really helps your customers? Do you have products and services that you sell and serve with excellence that your customers really need? They're going to buy this stuff from someone. Why not from you? And so it's really about sort of stepping into the power rooted in the value that you provide and approaching negotiations more sort of peer to peer versus, some peddler begging for business, which, that posture of confidence and courage is very important in commanding the price you deserve.
I love it. I think on the B2C side, I think those sales are very easy. They're easier for sure.
Yeah,
it's like that's just
everybody's being nice.
It's just emotional,
polite.
right? That's an emotional
Right.
purchase.
Yep.
Anytime you're
Yep.
selling to somebody who is at their home, at their physical residence or their building, that's such an emotional purchase. Like, if I can identify passion, I'm an expert and I want the best for them, like the sale is so easy.
Yep.
The sale becomes complex when you're into an RFP.
Sure. You've got procurement tactics and processes and people who are professionally trained to beat you up on price.
Professionally trained to beat you up on price. I love that because they are too.
Yeah, some of them go to school a week or 2 or 3 a year to get your stuff for less. And if you're not investing in your own skill in this regard, you're bringing a knife to a gunfight.
I love one of the things I heard you say. So I loved your keynote at the CIMA Leadership Forum. I thought it was outstanding. It was actually my favorite keynote of the entire program because I like to make money, and I felt like that helped me make money. So, one of the things that you said I thought that was really powerful at that time was just because you are in a conversation with somebody from procurement or from operations or facilities doesn't necessarily mean they're telling you the truth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I had a deal with Jiffy Lube that was for 550 some locations back in 2016. And we knew where we wanted to be in price. And let's just say it was $60 a service. And we knew where we wanted to be, and we knew that was the right price for us. And they came back and they were like, hey, your competitors are around $50 a service. Can we make that happen? And you know what? We said yes. And later on, I got to know the guy, and like 6 months go by, and he's like, he's like, the fact of the matter is that we were going to take your price at 60. But I said to my colleague, I bet I can get him to 50 if I tell him there's another bidder. There was no other bidder. There was nobody else there.
Oh.
And you said that. And when you said that at the keynote, and I thought to myself, yes, they did this to me. I've fallen victim to this. How do you coach through that? How do you help an entrepreneur who's pricing their work? And you said it's fear, and it is fear, because it's fear that if I don't win the deal, I can't make payroll. If I don't win the deal, I can't put milk on the table. If I don't win the deal, I can't pay for the trucks. Like, how do we coach through that?
Yeah. Well, I think step one is just awareness. So I've sat in lots of negotiations on both sides of the table and seen behind the curtain that buyers do. At the sort of less, at the more mercenary and aggressive end, there's outright lying, like your buyer did to you. At the less mercenary end, there's still curated information, right? So one of the pieces of coaching we give is remember what it's like to be a buyer when you sell. So let's imagine you're walking down the street and you see a garage sale and there's an antique rocking chair there that would be perfect for the den. And you're like, oh, that, probably maybe $50. Who knows? You walk up and you ask them how much it costs and they say 25. Very many folks would say something like, would you take 15? because it can't hurt to ask. Why not? Why not try to save a little money, right? That the idea that customers try to get our stuff for less, we have to just understand that that will always happen because it is part of our survival instinct. It's part of the human condition to try to hold on to our resources. So one is understand the motivation. Two is understand the tactics. So another example, let's imagine you're going to buy a car this weekend. You go and you know what trim package you want, you know what make and model. You go to 3 dealers in town that provide, and ask them all for their best price. If the guy that gives you the lowest price is the one you want to buy from because it happens to be closest to your house and they have a great service department and hours, you don't tell them, you are the lowest price of all 3, but I'm hoping you'll give me a better deal. You may
Right.
not outright lie and say one of the other dealers, gave you a lower price, but you're certainly not going to disclose everything.
Yeah.
So you consider that buyers at the least curate information, and at the worst fib, fabricate, stretch the truth, exaggerate, lie. And it's because it's in their best interest to do so, because they trade in our fear. They trade in our lack of confidence. And I don't think that makes them bad people. I don't think your Jiffy Lube guy is a bad guy. He had a job to do. He had a boss to impress. He had, he had maybe budgets to spend, he had a limited budget. So we have to just A, understand that it happens. B, take the emotion out of it. And C, recognize that, as I said from the stage at Simon, buyers are liars. They're not always telling you the whole truth.
Yeah, they're given their fear. They're given their. I love the fear piece because you're really working through that. So as you go into these negotiations, or as you go into these pricings, what should we do as entrepreneurs to get out of the fear and sell? How do we get through that?
Yeah, well, there's a number of different things that help. One is preparation. So as you're walking into that meeting, we'll just use that Jiffy Lube example. You did some of the preparation I would absolutely encourage, which is be very clear what number you need, kind of what's your walkaway point, what number makes sense to you. I would also sort of think through what's the actual floor. Like if we know we want 60, but they offer 50, are we willing to take that or not? And then push that further. Under what conditions? What has to be true? What are we going to change about the scope of the deal, or what are we going to ask for from them? So what are some, things we can trade back and forth? And it could be de-scoping, but maybe there's no way to de-scope a service in the snow removal world. I don't know if there is or not, but you could also ask for, okay, if we're going to do it at that price, I don't need just the Western division. I'd needed to go, nationwide, or I need you to write a testimonial we can put on our website, or I need the payment, the full year of payment 100% up front, or like, what are the asks that you can do to maintain price integrity with your customer? So preparing some of those things. But then there's the sort of mental preparation. Those are sort of tactical and logistical, which are helpful to walk into the room ready to discuss. But the other is sort of preparing our own mindset. So one of the questions I love to ask people before they walk into a customer is, what are the things you hope they do not ask you? What are the things you are terrified they're going to say to you? And then if they do ask those things or say those things to you, what's your best response? And to put some time and effort into preparing some messaging and saying it out loud, kind of doing a little role play so that we're comfortable. One of the things that happens to sellers when they're in negotiation, because there's so much fear present, customer hits us with something and we get kind of rocked off our mooring and we operate from fear. And when we're operating from fear, the amygdala is in charge. That's the caveman brain, right? It's good at fight or flight. It's not good at reasonable, nuanced, profitable decision making. So the more that we've anticipated the scariest scenarios ahead of time and thought through them, the easier it is in the moment when we're getting faced with those to maintain some equilibrium and to operate from a place of some calm, which allows us to be more, cautiously reactive versus panicky and reactive. So it's preparation is a big one. The other thing I would say that is a very underutilized tool in negotiation is questions. So what questions can I ask? If they tell me they've got a competitive quote that's lower. And by the way, if you're in B2B sales, you're going to get that. I don't know if it's 90% of the time or 95, but you're going to get that. Somebody's going to compare you to some other cheaper quote. Now, in that case, he didn't even have one, but even if he did, what questions can I ask in that moment that he compares me against someone cheaper that allows me to crack open this conversation and explore how much pricing power I might have? There's something called the instinctive elaboration, which is from psychology, that our brains are physiologically incapable of contemplating anything else when we're asked a question, at least for a fraction of a second. So if I said to you, Dave, what color is your shirt? For a fraction of a second, you contemplate what color your shirt is. You're not thinking about this podcast. You're not thinking about what I'm saying about pricing. Why that's important in a negotiation is it's very resistance driven. They're pushing on you. You're pushing back on them. We're pushing back and forth. What can we do to interrupt the pushing? And one of the ways we can reduce resistance is through questions. And so, let's imagine you're the Jiffy Lube guy. You just got done telling me you got a $50 quote. I say, hey, I want to make sure that we put our best foot forward in the most competitive way possible. Before I come back to you with a revised proposal, do you mind if I ask you a couple questions? Sure. Now you can ask questions, and there's a million of them, but that's where the brainstorm ahead of time comes into play. Here's one I love for that moment. If you could rewind history and say, if we could just imagine if the prices were exactly the same, between these two, if we could just wave a magic wand and erase the price gap, who would you choose? Oh, I'd choose you, Dave. Okay. So that I come back with a revised proposal that totally meets your needs. Can you tell me what it is about our company, our team, our proposal that has you say that we'd be the choice if price weren't the factor? And shut up and listen to what they say.
I love that question. The first time that I heard you pitch this question, I heard you at the keynote pitch this question, and I got a call from Facebook, and they wanted us to do some snow plowing work at their deal, and I asked them this question. I actually, I asked the facility guy. His name was James. I asked him the question. He said, "No." He said, "Listen, we have no reason why we wouldn't want to work with you." And I was like, that's outstanding. Can we get a call next week to follow? I was trying to set the secondary call, but we closed that deal. So I actually used that question. I actually used it in the field, because I think it's a wonderful question. Like if pricing's not on the table, why would you not work with me? And I think that is, I love that. So you work with entrepreneurs all the time. Like I think I noted, you've worked with over 1,000 companies to generate over $1 billion in incremental profits. How does somebody get connected to work with you? How does that happen?
Well, thanks for asking that. So I'm pretty easy to find. So our company's website is boostpricing.com, boost like the energy drink, boostpricing.com, and you can fill out a contact form there. But also we make a lot of free resources available on the website. So I publish a lot of blogs about how to get better at pricing and stuff like that. So that's all free. I'm also on LinkedIn, and I'm very active on LinkedIn and put out a lot of videos and written content on LinkedIn as well. And you can find me there at Casey Brown Boost on LinkedIn.
That's awesome. I love it. All right. So you also have a book that you just came out with, Fearless Pricing. That's incredible. So what inspired you to write the book?
In a word scale. So I have a very deep passion for this content. I believe that if you are excellent at what you do, you ought to be paid like you're excellent. Not like you're good, not like you're mediocre. And too many companies are accepting mediocre pay for excellent work, accepting underpricing for the value. And so that's what, gives me the fire in the belly to hop on plane after plane after plane, going around and giving keynotes. But however many keynotes I do, and however many companies hire us to work with them to get better at this, there are millions more companies that need this message, in my opinion, and maybe don't otherwise have easy access to it. So rather than, the price tag of a keynote or a consulting or training engagement with us for $20, you can buy a book, and I put all the secrets in there. There's no hidden, like, behind the paywall kind of thing. I'm very passionately committed to people being paid well for their excellence and commanding the prices they deserve.
I love that. And I think it is so important. How do you get there? Like I hear it from the stage, and I hear it from the book, and I hear it from the show, and I hear it in the messaging. And then, when you're dealing with the customer and it's like, oh man, the price is too high. Oh man, the price is too high. Oh man, the price is too high. Oh, your price is too high. And as a salesperson, you start to get discouraged. You start to get beat down. You start to think, gosh, it's only about price. It's only about price. How do you coach that salesperson through that?
Yeah. Well, something very important about what you just said is that customers give us asymmetrical feedback. There are times we are the cheapest. There are times we're the most expensive, and there are times we're somewhere in the middle. All we ever hear is you're too expensive, you're too expensive, you're too expensive. So we have to first understand that we're not getting the full picture of feedback. We're only getting half of it. And by the way, sometimes we hear you're too expensive. That's actually a lie. We're already the cheapest, but the buyer might say, oh, I like what you've proposed here, Dave, but I got 3 other quotes sitting on my desk that are lower than yours. I mean, you don't have to be the lowest, but you got to get in the ballpark, man. If you could do this for $50 a service, can we make that happen? Like, we're getting that feedback even when the customer is prepared to pay the full 60 or whatever it is. So we are getting asymmetric feedback. We are not getting the truth. And the first step of being able to operate from confidence versus fear is to shine a very clear light on the reality of that. Because what we're doing when we sell from fear is we're afraid of the shadows. And it's like, once you actually shine a light around, you turn on your bright flashlight and shine the light around, it's not as scary as it feels. So we've got to understand that they're doing this to us. We've got to sort of shine a light on that and uncover the real power dynamic, like I talked about before. And then the other thing is to really just show up. It's a repetitive thing. Oh, I want to say one more thing about the asymmetric feedback. There's something called the negativity bias, which is where human beings recall negative events with greater frequency and intensity than positive events. Right? You can hear 20 wonderful compliments, but you have one schoolyard bully say something to you as a kid, and it's like, we fall off the deep end with our confidence. Same happens in sales. You can close 20 deals in a row where people don't say a one word to you about price, and then the 21st you lose that deal over price. You're like, oh my gosh, our prices are too high. We focus on the negative. We've got to shine a light on the positive. I talk in the book and on the keynote stage about this idea of an auto yes. So when I ask audiences, hey, what kind of feedback do you get from customers? Your price is too low or too high? Oh, too high. They always tell us too high. Okay, I say, have you ever had a customer ask you for a quote for your products and services, and you gave them that quote and they said, okay. In other words, they bought at the price without a negotiation. And the answer is always yes. Everybody's had that experience.
I love those.
That is data from your customer that your price is fair or too low. We ignore it. We just shove that off to the operational side of our
fair
business.
Fair or too low. I just felt horrible. I now feel horrible. I got the deal. It's because I was too low. No.
Yeah, well, you know that $10 a service times however many Jiffy Lube services you provided. You already know that. You've got some
$5,000 a week.
Undercapitalized execution in your past. But the Nigerian proverb, the best day to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best day is today. Like, okay, yeah, we've left some money on the table. How do we learn from that and mine from those auto yeses the confidence that our customers do value our products and services and that our prices are fair and competitive, or possibly even a little low? So it's about balancing all that negative feedback we get from customers that our prices are quote unquote too high with the reality that lots of businesses are choosing us every single day at really competitive and fair prices.
No, it's true. So we've talked in my mind a lot about like the psychology of pricing and kind of what happens a little bit back and forth.
That's because that's where all the problems lie. But yes, I'm happy to turn to tactics if you want.
It's where all the problems lie. It's why everybody's on the couch saying, why don't they buy my work? That's then as soon as they do, it was priced too low. So
that's right. That's right. Because listen, it's not, most people do not have not a substantial gap in their skills or knowledge. Like, it isn't that they don't know what to do, what to say, what process to follow. It's when they're standing face to face with a customer who's dangling a theoretical competitive quote over here to make you afraid, we fall in the trap. And so even though we know what to do, what to say, what process to follow, we can't do it in the moment because we get in our head, we get in our gut, we get afraid, we feel pushy, we feel salesy, we feel weird. We start telling ourselves stuff like, well, 100% of $50 a service is better than 0% of 60, and all the other things we say. And it's all rooted in fear, self-limiting beliefs, emotions, habits, and attitudes.
It's so true. Everything you're saying is so true. This fear of, if you're in a conversation with a customer and they ask you what the ballpark price is, the price should be $1,000, but because they asked you, you think, well, maybe I won't say 1,000, maybe I'll just say 800. Well, maybe I won't say maybe I'll just say 700. Oh, it's $650. And then it's like, and 100%. Then the whole way home, you're kicking yourself. Why did I say that? I can't believe that.
Especially if they go, all right, that sounds good. You're like, ah.
It's so true. So I'm a believer in I'm a believer in this. I call it set the rock. I'm a believer in, if you ask me what the ballpark price is, and I know it's $1,000, even if it's gonna make me nervous enough to squeeze out of the room, I'm gonna tell you 1,500. Because I don't know what I don't know yet. I don't know all the details yet. I got to shoot this thing high. I got to come in high, and then I got to watch your facial expressions. What are you doing? How long does this fit? Whatever. But to the price of to the putting together the price, a lot of people don't know their worth. Like they don't know what their labor should be. They don't know what their markup should be. They don't know what their profit should be. Warren Buffett says if a business isn't making 40% gross margin, it's not a business to invest in, right? So do you work with entrepreneurs and help them understand what their fair market price is and how they come to that? Or is that something that they figure out on their own? Or how do you walk through that?
It's a great question. The short and blunt answer is no. We don't tell people what they should charge because actually I don't know, and usually they don't either. And it's really through some tactics to try to uncover that in the marketplace that we kind of encourage them to sort of map out their pricing power. People come to us and they think if they raise their price, they're right at the cliff. Their toes are right on the cliff. And if they raise their prices, they're going to fall off the cliff and all their volume's going to disappear. I know from a couple decades of working in this space, the cliff is across the room and they have a lot more power than they think. But generally, most often, the biggest problem is not that they don't know how to figure it out. It's that they don't know how to actually execute it when they're standing in front of the customer. So you can invest a lot of money, time, and effort in strategy, but then if you do not have the skills and mindset to stand in front of a customer, take those punches and win the deal, then it's like you've got this great strategy, you hand it to a sales team. If you don't have the hearts and minds of the sales team, then you're giving, your Ferrari to a toddler. We've got to deal with the execution piece. That said, it's not that there's no benefit to improving your strategy. But I think that the way to do that is generally less through a lot of like spreadsheets and math and a little more through market experimentation. The reason I say that is it is important to understand your true costs and to understand some, reasonable margin targets because that will set your floor. Cost plus pricing sets a floor, but it's almost never the right way for best in class or better in class companies to set their price because value drives price, not cost. I'll say that again because it is maybe the most important thing in this whole conversation. Value drives price, not cost. So when you figure out the cost of your trucks and the gasoline and the labor and the this and the that, and you put your 40% on it or your 50%, like what customers will pay you has nothing to do with your cost and everything to do with your value. And the only way to understand where that ceiling is to do the kind of exercise you engaged in where you say $1,500 and you see what happens. How quickly we're able to map out our unexercised pricing power is a function of the willingness we have to take some risk and be uncomfortable. And I'm not advocating that everybody who has a $1,000 service needs to pop a 50% price premium on it and see what happens. Maybe their risk tolerance is I'm going to quote 1,100 and see what happens. So I don't prescribe anybody their own risk tolerance, but I do want them to understand that there is pricing power in your business that you are not exercising. And the only way to find out the limits of that pricing power is to go to the marketplace with a new number and charge it.
I want to talk about discounts because I think discounts are something that people often hear. And there's a famous restaurant in Seattle called the Metropolitan Grill. Right. And it's a famous steakhouse. It's an old world steakhouse. It's kind of the old school place. It's expensive. Yep. They used to have the cigar bar inside. And I'm a big fan of steakhouses everywhere I go. And it's probably one of the best I've eaten at in the world. And one of the things that I heard a long time ago was that, if a steakhouse, a premium steakhouse is discounting or offering coupons or whatnot, their business is somewhat in trouble. And a couple of years ago, I saw the Metropolitan Grill come out with discounts. And I thought to myself, I wonder if they're in trouble. Now, I don't know if they are or not, and I'm not saying that. But the discount made me think, maybe they're not doing that well. Maybe it's not as good as it's cracked up to be. How do you feel about discounting? Is discounting a mistake? Where does that fall?
Yeah. Well, it's a great question. And I will quickly segment the world into two parts for purposes of this conversation, which is the idea of retail, B2C establishments like, Nordstrom's doing sales. Like there is a boatloads of research around retail pricing to consumers that I am not an expert in. And so I'm going to just parse that part of the world out. But
Okay.
if we're in this sort of B2B or B2C negotiated space that I think, certainly you and I are in, and many of your listeners, discounts, the right answer is never ever discount. That's not that, or the right answer is not never ever discount. I'm not saying never discount, but I would like everyone who runs a business and makes decisions about pricing to ask themselves when they're standing in front of a customer or getting ready to go to a customer, to ask themselves this question: is this discount absolutely necessary for me to win this piece of business? Is this absolutely necessary? When the answer is yes, then the discount may be the right thing to do. But very often the answer is no. Another thing I ask in some of my keynotes, I'll ask people to, if they believe me when I assert that at least some of the time they're discounting to customers that had already made up their mind to buy from them. And they, yes, they've done that. They've said, in your case with the Jiffy Lube story, you actually know that was true, right? We discount when we don't have to. And I very strongly argue against that because it's costing us, hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. That's the financial reason to be very cautious about discounting. But there's another, maybe even more important reason to be careful about discounts, which is it's pricing and how you present and own your value as part of your brand. And I think that's where the steakhouse story kind of comes into play. It's like, if you're the best in class in your marketplace and you're willing to cut your price as soon as you get pressure, what does that tell them about you? And I think particularly in companies where services are provided, they're looking to you to be the expert. You're the thought leader, you're the knowledgeable one about the best way to solve this problem. And if they push on you for a price and you fold, does that give them reason to doubt? Even with the steakhouse, it's like, are they as good as they think they are? Because if they're ready to fold like a cheap suit at the first sign of price pressure, maybe they're not that great. Pricing is part of our brand, and I think discounts can be really harmful to that.
I've never seen a 50% off sale at the Louis Vuitton store.
Right. But at Kohl's, 70% of things are on sale.
Right. But at the but if you go into the Louis Vuitton or the Gucci or the Prada, like there is, I don't even think they have a discount rack. I mean, I don't think anything's ever discounted.
And they're unapologetic about it. I think there's a story, and I don't know if it's true, but I heard it once about the Ritz, that somebody, a woman showed up there and asked if they had rooms available for the night, and they said they did. And she asked them how much, and they said $575. And she said, well, there's a Holiday Inn down the street for 79 cents. And they said, ma'am, we'll be happy to call you a cab. Right? Like, who knows? That might be lore. But the idea is like, there is nothing wrong with standing in your value. I don't think that's arrogant to confidently create space around your value and command the prices you deserve. There's a diplomatic, respectful way to engage in conversation with customers and still hold the line on price.
And when you hold the line on price, there's a whole lot of things that go with it, like your brand, your appearance, the way you execute the work, the way you communicate, because you don't get to command that price unless the operational side of the business produces excellence.
100%. Everything we've talked about so far, 100% of it is rooted in the assertion that you have a valuable product or service that really stands up to that excellence test. Doesn't mean you have to be perfect. Doesn't mean you can never make a mistake. But if you make a mistake, you need to clean it up with some integrity. But if you don't have value, you don't have price power. If you don't have something people want and value, fix that first. Don't go changing price. But for best in class and better in class companies who have a solid value proposition and really address the market with really good products and services, you have pricing power. Use it.
There's an interesting scenario. I was talking to a gentleman who owns a business in the landscaping industry, and they're about a $30 million business. And he said he doesn't want to be a high priced person. He wants to be cheap. And he said he wants to choose clients who don't really care what the property looks like, and they just want cheap service. And, I thought about that for a long time. Like they just want to throw out work, and they're not trying to be everything to all people. They're not trying to do a good job. They're not proclaiming they do a good job. And they're not looking for clients that want a good job. And I thought about that for a long time, and I thought, they've been in business a long time. They've been doing this for 20 years. They're doing $30 million a year in revenue. And I've watched over the last 5 years as I've watched that business decline and struggle more and struggle more and struggle more and struggle more. And I wonder if, on the flip side of that, of setting the bar low and delivering low actually has a catastrophic ending to it. Like, I wonder what you think about that.
I mean, it's a great question. I will candidly say that most of the people that sit in my audiences, most of the people that hire our company are the best in class and better in class. They're sort of pushing the envelope in the other direction on quality and price. Certainly there's I remember from, my marketing class and in the MBA program, the idea of a skim strategy, like you're the Tiffany's, right? Or are you the Nordstrom or you Walmart? Like, there are companies that choose to be the low cost provider as a strategic advantage and make it work. I think what you're pointing out is what I've seen, which is that there's very slim margins around that kind of decision making. If you're going to be the lowest price and cut corners on quality to be that lowest price, and that's acceptable to your customers, you're often making so little money per job, per deal, per customer, that one thing goes wrong, you're upside down. And now you have to take another shortcut on quality. And now that hurts your pricing power even more. And so I think just in terms of safety margin, companies that chase that end of the market, it's a volume game exclusively, and there is very little room for error. Whereas I think, kind of sitting at the other end of the market, which is where, you and I play, there's more resources because we've charged appropriately for value. So now we can reinvest in making sure tomorrow's quality is better than yesterday's quality. And I think that's hard to do at the bottom of the market.
Super hard. All right, I've got 2 questions left. I know we've got time. One is, how do your personal belief and habits influence the way you sell?
So there is something that every human being walking around who's ever spent $1 has, which is the sort of set of purchasing habits and buying style. So my older brother is very careful with money. He will do a lot of research. He'll read consumer reports. He'll shop a couple of stores. He'll think about it. He's very, very, very careful about how he spends. Getting a good deal is really important to my brother. I am not wired that way. If I am convinced this is going to solve my problem, I will plunk down that money in that minute. I'm a little more impulsive.
I'm kind of like you.
Yeah. Well, good. Of course I think it's the right way to be. It's the way I am. But, and I like any chance I can get to rib my brother, and make fun of him. But like how that shows up when either of us are wearing a sales hat is that if thinking it over, shopping around, pushing hard for a good deal is how you buy, that can influence the lens through which you see every transaction. So you're selling to a customer and you tell them this is going to be $60 a service, and they say, oh, that seems too expensive. I got to get a couple of other quotes. Your brain sort of naturally goes, that makes sense. Or I got to think it over, or I got to talk to my business partner. Well, that makes sense because you shop very carefully, right? If that's how you shop, that can make you more susceptible or vulnerable to put off stalls and certain negotiating tactics. Where since you and I are a little more decisive and impulsive in the moment about spending, somebody says, I got to think it over. We might be a little more naturally willing to kind of push and say, okay, what kind of information would be helpful for you to make a faster decision? Maybe I can help you with that. We don't sort of take that, the stall at face value. So it doesn't mean if you're a careful purchaser that you're, doomed to be bad at sales, but it's one of those things. If we're aware of it, then we can choose to act outside those habits and practices. If we're not aware of it, we don't even know it's an obstacle to success. Then we're sort of hampered by it blindly.
That's awesome. I love it. That's good. That's good stuff. That's good stuff for sure. Give me a lot to think about. I'm actually running out of notes on my page here, so I almost need a second piece. I almost have to pause the entire show and get a second piece of paper so that I can take more notes. So my final question is really, who is your ideal client? Who is a best fit for you guys to work with?
So our ideal client is a company that has a sales team that negotiate pricing. That often means a B2B because a lot of negotiated sales happen in the B2B space, but there's some B2C negotiated sales that fall into that. And, snow removal could be a perfect example. But they are a company who has a sales team that negotiates price, and they are best in class or better in class. They have something really compelling for the market, but the owner, founder, CEO, business leader senses that they're maybe leaving money on the table through sub-optimized price execution. And they want to help their team get better. They want to help their team. They want to invest in their people and their skills and mindset such that the whole company can become a lot more profitable.
That's incredible. So if that fits you, if you are negotiating price, if that is happening with you, if you have a sales team, reach out to Casey Brown, Boost Pricing, get with them, connect with them. I think it's the best decision you can make for your business. That's my personal thought. What final tip would you leave with the audience today?
Can I tell a super fast story?
You can tell as long a story as you want.
Great. There is a story about Pablo Picasso that once upon a time he was sketching in a plaza, and a woman recognized him, and she asked him if he'd sketch her, and he says he will, and he dashes off a quick sketch. And upon seeing the sketch, she is fascinated. She can't believe how well he captured her spirit, her essence, her je ne sais quoi. And she asks him if he'll sell it to her, and he says yes, and he quotes her price of 5,000 francs. Now, that was a huge sum of money for that time of history, and she's shocked. In fact, she's angry. She says, "But sir, it only took you 5 minutes." And he said, "No, madam, it took me a lifetime." And I think that is such an important story for every entrepreneur, every business owner and leader to recognize that we are masters in our craft, truly masters. And it's hard to become a master. It takes a lot of hard work and years of building expertise. But once you are a master, things get very easy. So some customer comes to you with an unsolvable problem, and you can look at it in 5 minutes and you know the best way to tackle it. Well, the only reason you can do that in 5 minutes is you've done it 10,000 times before. Don't be tempted to underprice what is easy or fast for you. It's no less valuable to the customer. They're not paying you for your time. They're paying you for your brilliance. You're Picasso, baby. Get paid.
I love it. Makes me want to rethink everything I do. I'm back to the drawing board after 2 decades in business. I'm going to need a slew of whiteboards. Listen, I love it. And, that was fabulous. We're ending it there. I don't want to take away from that story. That was absolutely incredible. This has been fabulous. And if you're in the audience today, again, reach out to Casey Brown and her business, Boost Pricing. Absolutely incredible. And listen, do yourself a favor and check out the book, Fearless Pricing. You can order it. You can get it. And here's what I think. Here's what I think that you should do. This is what I really think. If you have a sales team and you have your group, order 4 or 5 copies of this book and give one to each one of the members on your team and go through it a chapter a week. Just make it simple for the sales team. That way it's easy to digest. 1 chapter. What did we learn? What's our number 1 takeaway? And what can we implement into our business this week that's going to boost our sales? And if you do that, you will be taking yourself to the next level. Fearless Pricing, that's the book written by Casey Brown. Get it for your team. Work it through like a workbook. And I think the more you educate the team, the more you build your teams, the more you grow your teams, the better they are going to execute. And it's not just pennies that are on the table. If you can increase a close rate from 10% to 20%, or from 20% to 30%, or 30% to 40%, that's millions of dollars that can potentially be on the table. And I believe that this book is that piece that's going to take you where you need to go. That's what I've got for you today. You can find Casey on LinkedIn, Casey Brown, Boost Pricing on LinkedIn. You can follow her there. Are you on Instagram or Facebook, any of those?
Not right now.
All right, not
Maybe
those.
someday.
We're just hanging out on LinkedIn, so follow her on LinkedIn.
YouTube.
All right, we're on YouTube.
A lot of
YouTube
videos
and
on
LinkedIn.
YouTube.
Follow her there. If you like this show, give us a like, give us a share, drop your comments into the comment box. I'm Dave Westcott, your host. Follow me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, anywhere where it's social. I'm hanging out. We're back 9:15 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. This was absolutely incredible. Casey, you are a master in what you do. It's been fabulous having you on the show. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
It was my absolute pleasure, Dave. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Mike Bott from Frost Solutions, one of the owners of the company. What we do is provide a mini weather station to give you a tailored forecast to those particular locations so you know where and when and what to do in those parts of town. You know there's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different ways that people can experience tremendous value having a technology like this.
Introducing the all-new Western Enforcer V-Plow. Engineered with all the features, efficiency, and performance of full-size Western V-Plows, built specifically for your half-ton truck. For more information, visit westernplows.com.